Let's talk about Flashpoint, the third Flash movie in my DC cinematic universe. The movie starts off in Paris, France. It looks like a normal, peaceful day until a tidal wave sweeps everything away, killing thousands. And later, we see Aquaman and his niece Tula going through the city looking for someone. And suddenly, what appears to be a drowned corpse of a woman stands up, pulls out a Greek dagger, and leaps at Aquaman, trying to kill him. He impales her with his trident, slams her into the ground, and asks her, "Where is your queen, Amazonian?" We then cut to the CCPD HQ, and Barry Allen wakes up from some sort of horrible dream. He notices it's about time to clock off, and so he tries to leave the office. But as he's leaving, he sees the news report of the attack on Paris. And so Barry sprints out of the office and falls down the stairs and eats shit. His super speed is gone. And when he falls to the bottom of the stairs, when he goes to stand up, his mom is there waiting for him, asking if he's okay. Barry freaks out because his mom is standing there. He goes to hug her, and as soon as he does, his brain is flooded with a lifetime of memories of his mom being alive and a constant presence in his life. This completely distracts Barry, and he and his mom go out for dinner, as it's his mom's birthday that night, and they were going to meet up for dinner. But while they're talking, Barry begins mentioning Iris and his kids. But his mom is flabbergasted because Barry isn't dating, let alone married. And this sends Barry spiraling. He checks his phone just to find that he has no contact info for Iris. He checks social media just to find that Iris is there, but isn't Iris West anymore. It appears that she's married to someone else. Barry goes to their house where Iris still lives, only she lives there with her now husband. And when Barry asks her what's going on, he really starts freaking her out because she says that they haven't dated since high school. And then Barry asks, "Where's Wally?" And that causes Iris to slap Barry. And as soon as her hand touches his face, he is flooded with a slew of memories of a lifetime not married to Iris. When he looks back up, Iris is crying, and she knows he knows what happens to Wally. Wally killed himself 2 years ago because Wally said that the whole world was moving in slow motion and he couldn't stand it anymore. And this is when Barry really realizes something is very, very wrong. And then we get some pretty typical Flashpoint shit. Thomas Wayne is a murderous Batman in the city of Gotham. Barry goes to get help from him. He beats up Barry because how did Barry know to go to the Batcave? Barry tries to explain that even he doesn't know what's going on. He just suspects he's in an opposite world and he came looking for Bruce but found Bruce's dad. And since Bruce doesn't exist in this new world, Barry decides he needs to get his super speed back because that's probably the only way he's going to manage to find a way to get back home. As he is waiting for a storm to hit Gotham, he and Thomas get to talking. Thomas asks him all about what Bruce is like in his world, and he explains, and then he asks Thomas what Thomas is like as Batman, and Thomas reveals that the whole reason he's Batman is because he blames himself for the death of Bruce. He believes that he was a failure as a father because he was unable to protect his son. And Barry says that he can see where Bruce gets it, and then he lets Thomas know that Bruce blames himself for not being able to save his parents, despite the fact that he was only 8 when an armed adult gunned his parents down. And that really gets to Thomas because Thomas doesn't think that Bruce should blame himself for the actions of someone else, and Barry then pats Thomas on the shoulder and says, "I'm sure Bruce would say the same to you." Barry goes to try and get struck by lightning and eventually succeeds, but he doesn't get his super speed back. Instead, he's horribly burned. And as Thomas rushes over to him to see if he's okay, someone starts laughing. The two men look up and we see Eobard Thawne getting out of a car, laughing his ass off at this, asking Barry, "What did you do?" Then we get a scene of Lex Luthor meeting up with Diana, revealing that Lex Luthor, who is the president in this world too, is selling her the location to all of the kingdoms of Atlantis in hopes that the Amazonian and Atlantean war can wrap itself up quickly if the lesser of two evils that Lex Luthor knows about swiftly kills the other one. Meanwhile, back in Gotham, Eobard is watching Thomas stitch up and bandage up the horribly lightning-scarred Barry. Barry is blaming Eobard for the entire situation, but Eobard just smugly laughs and says, "Take my hand, Barry." and Barry grabs Eobard's hand, and then he gets another memory flash. Only this time, he has a memory of him talking to his dad over the grave of his mother. It was the first year since Barry proved that Eobard was the one that killed Nora Allen, and so this is the first time Henry Allen has been out of prison since Barry was 10, and the two guys are catching up over Nora's grave. And Henry expresses his remorse of not being there for Barry's life, and then Henry says that they can't change the past, but they can at least try and make the future a better one. But that's when Barry remembers that he can change the past. After all, that's what Eobard did. And so he runs into the time stream, he runs back in time, he runs back to his childhood home, and he stops Eobard Thawne from murdering his mom. The two speedsters duke it out in this dude's front lawn and then run back into the time stream and continue their fight. And then Barry tackles Eobard, and the two of them fall out of their time stream, and we see Barry wake up in Central City HQ like he did at the beginning of the movie. And then we cut back to now. Barry asks Eobard what the hell was that, and Eobard explains that Barry just experienced a retcon. Eobard, who's from the 26th century and knows all about time travel stuff because it's a well-documented, regulated thing in the 26th century, explains that a retcon is what happens that if you go back in time and change something in the past and then return to the new changed present, that's what happens when your memories start rewriting themselves with what they should be in this timeline. And then we get a whole thing of Barry having a sort of crisis of consciousness because he realizes that he's to blame for this whole situation because he ran back in time and changed everything. And so to sort of make up for it, Barry decides that he is going to fix this world and then try and figure out how to return back to his own before his memories fade entirely and he only remembers this timeline. And then when he asks Eobard, how are you here? Eobard reminds Barry that he erased himself from time by killing Barry's mom in the original timeline, and that if he ever goes back to the future, he'll probably erase himself from existence. So until then, as long as he stays in the past that he changed, he is effectively immune from changes to the time stream. So now Eobard has the memory of this dude stopping him from killing Nora, but he also still has the memory of the entire second Flash movie and all that shit. Eobard's just a walking paradox. Dude can do whatever the fuck he wants. But we have to remember that Eobard doesn't have super speed here because Wally literally ripped it the fuck out of him in my second Flash movie. The horrible burned Barry Allen begs Thomas to take him back outside because he needs to get hit by lightning again. And Eobard just sort of laughs at him, stating that the odds of getting hit by a random bolt of Speed Force energy in the first place are 1 in 480 quadrillion. Barry thinking that if he goes outside and gets hit by lightning again, that he's somehow going to get his super speed back is wishful thinking, to say the least. And Eobard then says the sort of depressing line, lightning never strikes twice. But Barry Allen just hopefully says, yes, it can. And sure enough, Barry goes outside, gets hit by another lightning bolt. It sends him and Thomas off the roof of Wayne Manor, and boom, baby, this motherfucker gets his super speed back. Grabs Thomas, runs back up to the manor, crackling with electricity. We got our boy back, and now this motherfucker is gonna fix this world. He decides if he's gonna leave this world better than the way he found it, he needs to start the Justice League in this world. They already have a Batman, so that's all good. So next up, they need to recruit Superman. And so they look up Clark Kent, and they find a man named Clark Kent who was adopted by Jonathan and Martha Kent back in the 1990s, but it's not his Clark. This dude was just a regular human, born in some other town in Kansas and adopted by the Kents later. He grew up and became a firefighter, and he tragically lost his life in Metropolis during the Brainiac invasion like 10 years ago. The entire Daily Planet building came crumbling down, but he had managed to save over 100 people from that building before it came down on top of him. Jonathan and Martha Kent, their superpower is parenting. And when Barry hears this news, he's a little bummed because he doesn't know what the Justice League is going to do without their Man of Steel. And when he says this, Batman's ears perk up. He's like, Man of Steel? Oh, I know that guy. Batman calls somebody and they meet at the top of Wayne Tower, and then we see a silhouette of a red billowing cape and 2 glowing red eyes. And then they come out of the shadow and it is fucking Cyborg with a big old red flowing cape and the Superman shield on his chest. Barry looks at him incredulously and asks, Cyborg? And Victor responds, yes, I'm a cyborg, but you can call me Steel. Lex Luthor hired Dr. Silas Stone and Dr. Henry Irons to create a robotic super soldier for the United States. They did that, and they got to pick the soldier of their choice out of the army, and in this timeline, Victor Stone joined the army instead of going off to play football. And so he was selected for the program, and he was turned into a cyborg known as Steel, the name coming from Dr. Henry Irons. And seeing this guy with that S on his chest, Barry realizes something. That S had to have come from somewhere. And when they were looking up Clark Kent, they found that he died during the Brainiac invasion. Brainiac only came to Earth in his timeline to hunt down Kal-El. So if Brainiac still came to Earth, that means Kal-El is here. And whoever put that S on Cyborg's chest probably knows where. And then we get a fun break-in scene with Barry and Eobard and Thomas and Victor tracking down the facility where Superman is, because Barry tells him everything he knows about the day Superman landed here, and he realizes that on that exact same day in their history, that's when a meteor struck Metropolis, and the meteor was then taken by the government and stored in a secure facility still in the city of Metropolis. So the gang all head out, break into the facility, and they find the horrible emaciated Superman just like in the comics. But unlike the comics, in this timeline, this Superman is accompanied by his doctor, Lois Lane. That part is inspired by the world of Flashpoint comics, where a child Lois met a child Superman being held in that horrible prison facility because General Sam Lane, Lois's dad, was the head of the facility. So that all still happened in my movie, and in this timeline, her meeting that little alien boy and seeing how sad and lonely he was in that horrible prison inspired her to become a xenobiologist, specifically so she could get assigned to this facility to watch out for that kid. The gang all try to break him out, but they are stopped by Captain Atom and Major Force, who were sent by President Lex Luthor because he detected this dude's secure access codes being used to gain entry to the facility where they store that super alien. They all fight their way out and return to Wayne Manor. And so now he has a super cyborg, a Batman, a Superman, and himself as the Flash, and he thinks this is a good enough team for them to at least try and stop Wonder Woman and Aquaman. Barry's current plan is he's assuming the whole reason these two started a war in the first place is because Vandal Savage tricked them into fighting like he tried to do in my first Justice League movie. So Barry just truly honestly believes if they can hold these two down and force them to talk things out, that this entire war can end peacefully. And so that's what they try to do. They go, we get that big awesome fight scene between all these guys and like every Atlantean and every Amazonian. And so then finally a freshly charged up Superman pins her down and Cyborg pins him down, and Barry forces the two to talk everything out. But as they're talking everything out, they are once again attacked by Major Force and Captain Atom, sent by Lex Luthor. Because the war between these two got too big and got too destructive, the UN wants them dead. And so Lex Luthor sent his two best guys to do the job, since this dude seems to have gone AWOL on his crusade to save everything non-lethally. And when Captain Atom and Major Force attack, everything goes to shit. Everything falls apart. Any hopes of saving this world go completely down the drain. And then Aquaman impales Major Force with his trident, and Wonder Woman impales Captain Atom with her sword. And those two beings of living nuclear energy start to detonate. And all of this sends Barry down the deep end. He has been trying to save this world because this is his new world. This is the world of his making. He had to fix this mistake. And that's when Eobard just grabs him and tells him, Barry, you can't change the past. And Barry says that he knows, and Eobard says, no, Barry, don't change the past. And Barry just looks at Eobard like, what are you talking about? And Eobard explains to Barry that if he runs into the time stream and he runs to his past self and stops himself before he creates the initial time boom that created this timeline, time should reset to his original timeline, the one that he came from. Barry asks Eobard how long he's known this, and Eobard says that he's known the entire time. He just wanted to watch Barry try and fail to save this world that he created. But then Barry almost did. Eobard reminds Barry that he was the Flash of the 26th century. And the entire time he was told by the rest of the Justice League of that time that he was unworthy of the title of Flash. And after seeing everything Barry did to try and save this world over the course of like 3 days, Eobard finally agrees with them. He isn't worthy to be called the Flash. Because this guy is. This was a years-long war between two races of superpowered beings that were killing thousands in Collateral. And Barry brought them to a peaceful talk summit in 3 days. Eobard tells Barry that he was genuinely inspired by this, and he apologizes to Barry for killing his mom. He tells Barry that he's sorry that he can't bring her back, and that he's sorry that when he tried, this is what happened. If he goes back and stops all of this from happening and he gets his life back with his wife and his kids, then Eobard won't feel as shitty for this. And just before Captain Atom and Major Force detonate, Barry thanks Eobard for telling him this. And Barry takes off. And then Barry runs, but he doesn't run back into the time stream. He runs back to Central City to talk to his mom. And we get that same scene from the comics, from the movie, where he and his mom have one last loving conversation where he explains everything, and she just hugs her son and tells him that everything's gonna be okay. And then Barry takes off into the time stream, and we get just a horrible scene of him chasing down and tackling his past self, apologizing for what has to happen. And the two Flashes collide, and then they kind of merge, and then they fall out of time stream, and he wakes up at his desk at CCPD, just like at the beginning of the movie. Only this time, it's the right CCPD in the right timeline. He goes back home and he finds Iris and the twins, and Wally is there helping with dinner, and he hugs all of them. And then he says that he has someone to see and he cannot wait to tell them this crazy story that he just had. But he runs off to Gotham City to go speak to Bruce. And then he and Bruce have the same conversation from the comics. And Barry pulls out the letter. You see, earlier in the movie, I would establish that Thomas Wayne has been writing letters to Bruce every week since Bruce's death, and Barry caught him writing the most recent one. And so this is where Barry says that before he left that timeline, he grabbed a letter because he thought Bruce should have it. And Bruce sits down and he reads that letter, and Bruce cries, and Bruce gets up and he hugs Barry and he says, "Thank you, Barry." And Barry says, "You're welcome, Bruce." And that is my version of Flashpoint for my DC Cinematic Universe.